Right now, in your pocket, there's a geopolitical weapon. Your iPhone, your Tesla, your laptop. They all have something in common, and it's controlled by one country. And if that supply gets cut off tomorrow, modern life as you know it stops. This is the rare earth monopoly, and it's the single biggest threat to the global economy that nobody is talking about. Let me show you why you should care. Every single iPhone contains 9 different rare earth elements. Yttrium, neodymium, dysprosium, elements you've never heard of, but you touch them, swipe them, depend on them every single day. That tiny vibration motor that buzzes when you get a text? Neodymium magnets. That crystal clear speaker that lets you hear your music? Praseodymium. Your camera's lightning fast autofocus system? Samarium and gadolinium. Even the vivid colors on your display? Europium and terbium make those reds and greens pop. A Tesla Model 3 contains over 2 pounds of rare earth magnets in its electric motor. Without them, the motor cannot generate torque. The vehicle becomes a 4,000-pound paperweight sitting in your driveway. An F-35 fighter jet? 920 pounds of rare earth materials throughout the entire aircraft. From the advanced targeting sensors, to the precision-guided weapon systems, to the jet turbine control systems. Every wind turbine generating clean energy relies on permanent rare earth magnets. Every data center, including the ones streaming this video to you right now, uses cooling systems and servers dependent on these materials. Here's the terrifying part. China controls over 85% of the processing of these materials. Not just the mining, the processing. That is the choke point. And that choke point, it's tightening. Now, you might be thinking, China just got lucky with geography, right? They have all the rare earths, so obviously they control the market. Wrong. Here's what the mainstream media consistently gets wrong, and what changes everything. Rare earths aren't actually rare. The United States has 1.8 million metric tons in proven reserves sitting beneath our soil right now. Australia has 4.2 million metric tons. Vietnam has an estimated 22 million metric tons, the second largest reserves in the world, but it's sitting in the ground completely untouched. China has 44 million metric tons. Sounds massive, right? But that's only 30% of global reserves. So if the geology exists globally, if other countries are literally sitting on these materials, why does China dominate? Because in the 1980s, under Deng Xiaoping's leadership, China made a calculated offer to the world. We'll do the dirty work. We'll accept the toxic waste. We'll destroy our environment. We'll undercut you on price. And you can pretend your hands are clean. And the West took that deal. Gratefully. See, here's the geological nightmare that makes this so hard. Rare earth elements don't exist in pure, concentrated deposits underground. They're not like gold or copper. They're chemically bound with radioactive elements like thorium and uranium in incredibly complex mineral structures. To separate them and make them usable, you need 3 steps that are environmental catastrophes. Step 1, mining. Digging up literally tons of rock for tiny yields. The ore might only contain 5 to 10% rare earth oxides. The rest? Waste rock and radioactive overburden. Step 2, acid separation. This is where it gets insane. You have to use hydrofluoric acid, sulfuric acid, and other incredibly toxic chemicals to separate 17 chemically identical elements. It's like trying to separate identical twins at the molecular level while they're chemically bonded together. One mistake, one leak, and workers die. Instantly. Step 3, high temperature refining. Extreme heat, over 1,000 degrees Celsius, and even more chemical processes to achieve the purity levels needed for magnets and electronics. The result? For every 1 ton of usable rare earth oxides, you generate 2,000 tons of toxic radioactive waste, contaminated water, radioactive tailings, acidic sludge that destroys ecosystems for generations. This is Baotou, Inner Mongolia, the rare earth capital of the world. That massive black shape you're looking at? That's a toxic lake, 5 square miles wide. It's filled with the radioactive sludge and chemical waste from processing the magnets in your phone, your headphones, your laptop. And here's the thing. Western countries didn't want this in their backyard. Environmental regulations made it too expensive. Communities protested. Politicians didn't want the political liability. So we made a choice: outsource the pollution to China. And in doing so, we handed them the keys to the 21st century economy. But China didn't just accept our waste. They turned it into strategic leverage. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, Chinese companies flooded global markets with rare earths priced so low that Western producers couldn't compete, even with their own mines. Molycorp, the American giant that once supplied the entire world from California's Mountain Pass mine, went bankrupt. Twice. Once in 1998, again in 2015. Australian processing facilities shut down. European refineries closed their doors permanently. One by one, the expertise evaporated. The engineers retired or moved to other industries. The institutional knowledge, decades of experience, disappeared. By 2015, the United States, the country that invented rare earth separation technology in the 1950s at Iowa State University, had zero processing capability. Zero. None. By 2025, only one rare earth mine operates in the United States. Mountain Pass in California, now owned by MP Materials. But here's the part that should make your blood run cold. For years, well into the 2020s, that mine had to ship its concentrated ore across the Pacific Ocean to China just to be processed into usable materials. Think about that. We dig the materials out of our own soil, ship them to a geopolitical rival to be refined, then buy them back as finished products at a massive markup. MP Materials finally brought processing back to American soil, building new facilities in Fort Worth, Texas that came online in late 2024. But they're still years away from matching Chinese volume, efficiency, and expertise. We're not leading this race. We're not even catching up. We're playing desperate defense in a competition where China has a 40-year head start. For 4 decades, this arrangement worked for us. China got the pollution and the environmental devastation. We got cheap iPhones and the illusion of clean hands. But here's the thing about monopolies. Eventually, the monopolist uses their power. December 2023, China announces a ban on the export of rare earth processing technology. Not the materials themselves, the knowledge of how to process them. Translation? You can't even learn how to do this anymore. We're the only teachers in the world, and the school is permanently closed. August 2024, export controls tighten on antimony and gallium, both critical for semiconductor manufacturing and advanced military equipment. Supply chain shudder. Prices spike overnight. And now, intelligence analysts and supply chain experts are predicting what they're calling the nuclear option for late 2025 or early 2026. A comprehensive export ban on rare earth permanent magnets to specific countries. Not just restrictions, not just quotas, a total ban on the finished products that every modern technology depends on. If that happens, and current geopolitical tensions over Taiwan and trade suggest it's increasingly likely. Here's the timeline of collapse. Week 1. Apple's magnet suppliers in Shenzhen and Guangdong stop all shipments to comply with Chinese export controls. iPhone production lines in India and Vietnam halt completely within 72 hours as existing magnet inventory runs out. No new iPhones can be assembled. Tesla's Gigafactory in Austin, Texas runs through its existing magnet stockpile. Within days, no new electric motors can be completed. Thousands of partially built vehicles sit frozen on the assembly line. Month 1. Pentagon weapons programs face immediate critical shortages. F-35 production lines can't source replacement parts. Guided missile systems sit incomplete. Drone programs stall. In classified briefings, military analysts describe scenarios where America's technological military advantage erodes in real time because we can't manufacture the weapons systems we've designed. Month 3. Wind turbine manufacturers across Europe and North America exhaust their magnet stockpiles. New installations stop completely. The entire green energy transition that governments have committed trillions of dollars to, it stalls. Not because we lack the will or the funding, but because we physically cannot build the equipment. This isn't fear-mongering. This isn't science fiction. This is the scenario that gets war-gamed in government situation rooms right now. And here's how you know the major players understand what's coming. They're panicking. Their actions tell you everything. General Motors saw this crisis approaching years ago. They signed a massive definitive supply agreement with MP Materials back in April 2022, locking an American-made magnet supply before everyone else woke up. By late 2025, MP Materials' Fort Worth facility is delivering those magnets, and GM's electric vehicle programs are among the only ones with secure, China-independent supply. Why would General Motors, one of the world's largest and most cost-conscious automakers, lock themselves into what is almost certainly a more expensive domestic supplier? Because they know the alternative is no magnets at all. Apple is frantically pivoting to 100% recycled rare earths for future products. They're not doing this because they suddenly care more about the environment than they did 5 years ago. They're doing it because they're terrified of supply chain disruption and total dependency on China. They've built robots like their Daisy system that can disassemble iPhones and recover rare earth elements from old devices. They're partnering with recycling companies globally to create urban mines from electronic waste. Tesla announced in 2023 that they're designing rare, earth-free electric motors for their next-generation vehicles and for the Optimus humanoid robot. Elon Musk, who usually loves being dependent on no one but himself, publicly stated this is a strategic priority. Why? Because even he sees the writing on the wall. The Department of Defense launched its mine-to-magnet strategy, a comprehensive plan to build a complete domestic supply chain for mining through magnet manufacturing. The price tag? Over $1 billion in initial commitments. The timeline? Military analysts estimate 10 to 15 years minimum to achieve full operational capability. But here's the crushing reality. While we're spending a decade trying to rebuild infrastructure we've voluntarily abandoned, China isn't standing still. They're innovating faster than ever, improving efficiency, developing new processing techniques, expanding capacity. We're not racing to catch up. We're racing to avoid catastrophic dependence on a country that might soon be our adversary. Here's the ultimate irony that politicians and tech CEOs don't want to talk about. All of this green technology we're rushing to build to save the planet from climate change. Electric vehicles that produce zero emissions. Wind turbines generating clean energy. Solar panels reducing our carbon footprint. Requires absolutely massive amounts of rare earth elements. And mining and processing those rare earths is one of the most environmentally destructive industrial activities on Earth. Your zero-emission Tesla required environmental devastation to build. That wind turbine saving the planet? Its magnets came from operations that destroyed ecosystems. For every single ton of rare earth oxides produced, 2,000 tons of toxic waste slurry, radioactive tailings containing thorium that contaminate groundwater for decades, acidic runoff that kills rivers and makes soil permanently unusable, heavy metal pollution that causes cancer clusters in nearby communities. Visual, return to Baotou Toxic Lake, dramatic drone shot. Remember that 5-square-mile toxic lake in Baotou? That's the hidden price of your sustainable lifestyle. We didn't eliminate environmental destruction. We just outsourced it to a country willing to sacrifice its own land and people to power our technology. We outsourced not just the jobs, not just the manufacturing. We outsourced the planetary damage. And now we're waking up to the fact that this was a devil's bargain. One we can't afford anymore, economically, strategically, or morally. So what happens next? The future isn't written. There are three realistic scenarios for how this plays out, and which path we take will shape the next 50 years of geopolitical power. Scenario 1. The Great Reassuring. The United States, Europe, Japan, Australia, and allied democracies collectively invest trillions of dollars over the next 10 to 15 years to build parallel, China-independent supply chains. MP Materials expands production at Mountain Pass and Fort Worth. Linus Corporation from Australia builds additional processing plants in Texas with Pentagon backing and funding. Canada reopens rare earth deposits it abandoned in the 1990s. New extraction technologies get developed. Less toxic, less waste, more efficient. Breakthrough recycling methods recover 95% of rare earths from old electronics, creating urban mining operations. Eventually, by the mid-2030s, we have a functioning, diversified supply chain that doesn't run through China. It costs significantly more. Products get more expensive. Taxpayers fund massive subsidies. It takes 15 years of sustained political will and international cooperation. But we're no longer held hostage. Probability, 40%. This is possible, but it requires unprecedented long-term commitment and cooperation between governments and industries that usually can't agree on anything. Scenario 2. The Technology Leap. We innovate our way out of dependence entirely. Scientists and engineers develop rare, earth-free alternatives that perform equally well or better. Tesla's rare, earth-free motors prove commercially viable and get adopted industry-wide. Induction motors and switched reluctance motors become the new standard. Material scientists create synthetic substitutes, engineered compounds that mimic rare earth magnetic properties without requiring the elements at all. Recycling technology advances dramatically. We achieve 98% recovery rates from electronic waste, creating truly circular supply chains. Every old iPhone becomes the raw material for the next generation of devices. E-waste transforms from environmental problem to strategic resource. Probability, 25%. This is the optimistic scenario, the innovation path, but it requires technological breakthroughs that aren't guaranteed, and it's the least certain in the near term. Scenario 3. The Permanent Dependency. We accept the new reality and manage the relationship. China maintains leverage indefinitely and uses it strategically. Every few years during trade disputes, Taiwan tensions, or South China Sea conflicts, they threaten export controls. We negotiate. We compromise. We make political concessions to keep supply flowing. Rare earth prices become geopolitical weapons. Your iPhone costs $1,800 instead of $1,200. Electric vehicle prices climb beyond middle-class affordability. The green transition slows to a crawl. National security becomes permanently compromised because our most advanced weapons systems depend on materials controlled by a strategic rival. China leverages rare earth control to expand influence. Smaller countries facing implicit threats of cutoff if they don't align politically. Probability, 35%. This is the path of least resistance, the path of inaction and short-term thinking. And unfortunately, based on historical patterns of political decision-making, it remains disturbingly likely. The most realistic outcome? A messy hybrid of all three. Some reassuring succeeds, but costs more and takes longer than planned. Some innovation breakthroughs happen, but not fast enough to solve the crisis completely. And a significant degree of continued dependence, because changing 40 years of infrastructure can't happen overnight. Expect a decade of high prices, supply chain volatility, and geopolitical tension as we navigate this transition. The question isn't whether it'll be difficult. The question is whether we have the political will to see it through. Here's the part that should genuinely keep you awake at night. Rare earths are just the beginning of this story. China has executed similar strategies across multiple critical materials. 70% of global cobalt refining, the essential ingredient in every lithium-ion battery. 65% of graphite processing, also critical for battery technology. 80% of solar panel manufacturing, the backbone of renewable energy infrastructure. 60% of lithium processing, despite having only small reserves. And cobalt? That's an even darker story we need to talk about. 70% of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, a nation with virtually no labor protections, where children as young as 7 mine cobalt by hand in conditions that would be criminal anywhere else. And who controls the majority of those Congolese cobalt mines? Chinese companies. Who processes that cobalt? China. This isn't just about iPhones and Teslas anymore. This is about who controls the fundamental infrastructure of 21st century civilization. The green energy transition we're betting our climate future on? China controls the supply chain. The electric vehicle revolution that's supposed to reduce emissions? China controls the materials. The smartphone-connected economy that defines modern life? China controls the components. Advanced weapons systems that determine military superiority? You see the pattern. We built a global economy where one country controls the physical materials that make modern technological civilization possible. And we're only just beginning to understand what that means for power, for sovereignty, for national security. Here's what you need to remember. The rare earth monopoly isn't really about minerals buried in the ground. It's about power. Power over the technology that defines how we live, work, and communicate. Power over the green energy transition that's supposed to save us from climate catastrophe. Power over military systems that determine who wins future conflicts. Power over supply chains that decide which countries prosper and which economies collapse. The next time you pick up your phone, the next time you drive your car, the next time you turn on a device that seems like pure magic, ask yourself, who really controls this technology? What would happen if the materials inside became unavailable tomorrow? And what are we actually willing to do? What are we willing to sacrifice? What are we willing to spend to prevent that future? The answer to those questions will define the next 50 years of geopolitical competition. And right now, we're running out of time to get it right. If this opened your eyes, you need to hit that subscribe button because we're just scratching the surface. Next week, I'm taking you inside the cobalt crisis in the Congo, where children as young as 7 dig through collapsing tunnels to mine the material in your ethical electric vehicle. It's the dirty secret the entire EV industry doesn't want you to know about. And it makes the rare earth situation look tame by comparison. And if you want to go deeper on the geopolitics of critical minerals right now, I've got a complete breakdown of China's lithium strategy and the coming battery wars linked in the card above. Thanks for watching. And remember, every technology has a cost. We're just finally starting to see the bill. See you in the next one.